Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. Today I'll tell you all about the oldest piece of literature. What can an epic written 4,000 years ago can teach us today? In this video I'll summarize and then analyze the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest surviving work of fiction by Homo sapiens. Epic of Gilgamesh is a Sumerian tale. I reviewed the Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki, written 1,000 years ago, and I was happy to have read the world's first novel. So my next challenge was to read the oldest story ever written. Not on paper, not on papyrus, but on clay tablets. Well, I read it on paper, but still it's wonderful to feel that someone 4,000 years ago carved those words on clay tablets. So when it comes to fiction, this is the mother of all of them. I just imagine how many people worked on that project. Those who created the tablets, dried them and carried them to someone who sat down and wrote the story. I believe the epic must have been passed on from generations to generations before it was written down. Okay, what is it? The Epic of Gilgamesh was said to have been written 3,000–4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia or modern-day Iraq, Syria. The story is written on 12 clay tablets that were discovered in 1850s, and the story was deciphered and translated in 1870s at the British Museum by George Smith. It is written in cuneiform script in Akkadian language, a relative of modern-day Arabic and Hebrew languages. The poem itself is said to be Sumerian, but it was compiled later on and kept in Iraq until the British took them to London. There are a few versions with some slight differences, but the main story is almost the same. Now, before we go any further, I want to clarify a few names. To be honest, I wasn't very clear what these names referred to, so thanks to Wikipedia, here we go. Mesopotamia refers to the fertile region between two famous rivers, Euphrates and Tigris in Iraq and Syria, and parts of Turkey. Babylonia was the name of the kingdom of Akkadian-speaking people about 4,000 years ago who replaced the Sumerians, another civilization that gave us alphabet, wheel, time divisions, and so forth. Uruk, the setting of this story, was a Sumerian city in modern-day Iraq. I was hoping the name Iraq was after Uruk, but some people dispute it, arguing that Iraq has come from an old Persian word for lowlands. The name Gilgamesh is Akkadian version of Belgamesh in the original Sumerian. It's like Odyssey from Greek became Ulysses in Rome. It's the same person, if he ever existed, of course. Now, that's out of the way, let's talk about the story. Gilgamesh, half god and half man, is the king of Uruk, but he's a terrible king. He's pretty much a tyrant. So there is an outcry. To stop Gilgamesh's tyranny, the mother goddess creates Enkidu from clay, an animal-like creature, but very soon he is seduced by a prostitute. After spending 7 nights of lovemaking with her, he is civilized and made into human. This is such a great metaphor that it's woman who civilizes humans. So Enkidu is ready to challenge the tyrant Gilgamesh. Unfortunately, Gilgamesh is too powerful for him and Enkidu is defeated. But it is not all lost. After the battle, they become really good friends. The city is not big enough for both of them, so they set out for a cedar forest to kill a huge loud monster called Humbaba. After they kill the monster, Gilgamesh gets naked to wash up. Seeing him naked, the goddess Ishtar fancies Gilgamesh, so she proposes marriage to him. Gilgamesh has heard terrible rumors about the goddess. None of her previous husbands were treated well, because Ishtar is the god of love and violence. Gilgamesh says no. She is angry and calls on her father to send the bull of heaven to kill Gilgamesh. There is a massive battle and Gilgamesh, with the help of his new friend Enkidu, managed to slay the bull. Now all the gods are angry, so they plan revenge. Meanwhile, Enkidu has a dream in which he is dying. Lo and behold, his dream comes true and he is killed. Gilgamesh is devastated. Not only he lost his best friend, but also realizes his own mortality. Now he's so fearful that he searches for the secret of immortality from the only immortal man, Utnapishtim, and his wife. Utnapishtim became immortal after a great flood, which some believe to be the same as the Noah story in the Bible. So to be immortal, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh to stay awake for 7 nights, but Gilgamesh falls asleep. Then he is given a gift of plant that would make him young, but it was stolen by a serpent. Gilgamesh is depressed by the futility of it all. On his return to Uruk, he notices the impressive walls of the city that he had built and understands that human life is mortal, but the city lives on. Gilgamesh is transformed from a selfish tyrant to a just king and becomes content and wise. A journey of self-discovery. In a sense, he is older and wiser, and that is his biggest transformation. So, to sum up, the oldest masterpiece of literature is a meditation on life and death. This very same question baffled humanity 4,000 years ago and does today. Now, let me talk about the form of the epic. The current version is not complete, so about 60% of the story has survived. There is no mention of an author, but experts believe that it was written by one person, as the original has a very uniform mood, suggesting various people could not have created such a uniform piece. It was written in unrhymed verse, with a lot of repetition being a major characteristics. When reading this, for some reason I was reminded of Men in the Sun by Ghassan Kanafani, the Palestinian author, partly because both are set in Iraq, but partly because I noticed the same speech repetition, as if sentences or phrases were passed from one person to another. This might be a linguistic thing or cultural, but I found it quite interesting. I read the 2003 translation by Andrew George, published by Penguin Classics. The introduction tells you pretty much everything, and the language is somewhat accessible. But most crucially, Andrew George's translation fills you in with parts that are missing based on his rigorous studies of various versions. But be warned, it's not your typical story. There are so many missing lines and words. On some pages, there are more words missing than there are actually words. Here, I'll read the part where Gilgamesh mourns the death of his best friend, Enkidu. May the sacred river Olai mourn you, along whose banks we walked in our vigor. May the pure Euphrates mourn you, whose water we poured in libation from skins. May the young men of Uruk the sheepfold mourn you, who witnessed our battle when we slew the bull of heaven. May the plowman mourn you in his furrow, when he extols your name with his sweet yodel. May the, missing word here, of teeming Uruk the sheepfold mourn you, who sends forth your name with the first. May the shepherd mourn you in his sheepfold, who made sweet for your mouth the milk and butter. Hear me, O young men, hear me. Hear me, O elders of teeming Uruk, hear me. I shall weep for Enkidu, my friend. Like a hired mourner woman, I shall bitterly wail. One of the major themes is human transformation. Gilgamesh is not fully human as he is half god, but at the end he has become fully human with the same mortal fate as others. I think this is crucial because humans too, when young, tend not to think about death, and only old people become fully aware of it. Enkidu is like an animal at the beginning and slowly is transformed to a human. And with his death, he is fully human. So the awareness of death makes us human, as animals, as far as I know, don't know about their mortality. A while back I read an Epic of Georgia, The Knight in Panther Skin by Shota Rustaveli. If you remember, that tale too has two best friends, Tyrell and Aftandel. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, both men, are best friends but also lovers, as they engage in sexual romance too. Enkidu's death is the biggest event in the story. Gilgamesh realizes his own mortality only after this event. I think we all grow much faster after a death in the family. We become reflective. The loss of Enkidu is the most heartbreaking part of the story. I think all stories are humans' attempt at immortality. We love stories because we want to know how they all end, how it all ends. One of the biggest questions the Epic of Gilgamesh presents us is this: if you had the chance, would you want to live forever? Utnapishtim, the only immortal man, lives alone with his wife. He has no friends, no neighbors, and there's no end to this. He cannot die. In other words, he's condemned to live forever. A life sentence for eternity. Think of the boredom. Think of the impasse, as if you're facing a wall for the rest of your eternity. Think of the frustration that this will not end. Never. Another interesting point was respect for nature. Every time there's a disturbance against nature, gods are alerted and they bring some punishment like natural disasters. This reminded me of the great tsunami of 2011 in Japan, as the mayor of Tokyo made the same remarks that God was punishing people. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, gods are forces of nature. The flood story is in nature's response to overpopulation. So here's another problem with immortality. If everyone lived forever, at some point you have to stop making more babies. There won't be enough space left that all humans who were born lived forever. The Epic of Gilgamesh might be the oldest surviving story humans have ever written, but it doesn't feel old. I mean the theme and the story. It raises the same questions, dilemmas, and problems we have today. Gilgamesh learned to be content with his life, learned to be a better person by the end, and learned to cope with the loss of his best friend, Enkidu. He was happy with his legacy of building a great city. So the bottom line is, life is what it is. In the meantime, be nice to others. Create something that you're proud of. That is Gilgamesh's lesson. Don't chase hollow dreams like the secret of immortality. Make something that helps others. Gilgamesh built a city that protected his people, and that is his legacy. He built a city that protected his people, and that's how he lived on, and that made him happy. Thank you.